Hi everybody, I'm Phil Fatiga. Welcome back to the Millcreek Government Channel. It is Channel 9. Today joining me is Patty Pauline. Patty is with the Erie County Department of Health, and our discussion today is going to be about something that, well, sometimes a lot of people don't like to talk about it. It's about suicide and then a death review of a child. Fascinating topics for sure. Patty, you do more than this at the Health Department though. You have many titles. What are some of them?
I do. I am in charge of the Injury Prevention Program.
Okay.
And Safe Communities Erie, and under that umbrella, I monitor and manage Safe Kids Coalition, the IP projects, and of course all the safety projects such as Child Death Review that fall under that umbrella.
Okay. Let's start with suicide. I have a pamphlet in front of me. The Erie County Suicide Task Force. Who's on that force?
We have mental health professionals, of course. We have local mental health, mental retardation from the county. We have groups that are demographically pertinent to this because it's either happening in their population or with the people they serve.
Okay.
And most at-risk populations. So we have quite a comprehensive approach to this.
Is your age group pretty much under 21 are you looking at, or is it just anybody when you say the Suicide Task Force?
No, suicide is all ages.
All ages.
We've had,
Okay.
you know, Phil, the youngest death we had for suicide in Erie County, you might want to, do you want to venture a guess?
7.
Age 10.
10. 10.
We had the youngest, I think,
Wow.
in the state.
Wow.
And then the oldest is age 96.
That brings up my next question, because there's a lot of myths associated with
Oh, absolutely.
the mysteries of this. Let me ask you the general question first of all. Generally speaking, in your territory, are suicides on the rise? Are they falling? Or about the same? The number stays about the same?
I think they are increasing. And I think we see more desperate people and a lack of hope, a lack of this feeling of hopelessness. You know, everyone's talking about gun control right now and for homicides and these mass shootings. And while that's important, because means matters, for every homicide, there's 5 suicides. So we have to weigh that and say, gee, I didn't know that. In Erie, we had like a dozen homicides last year, but we had, I think, 45 or 50 suicides. That's a big problem. We should be focusing on it more.
So, yeah, and good word. To focus on that suicide, I'll read you a myth here. People who talk about suicide are crazy and insane. That's a myth, of course. The fact that they may have mental health issues or be depressed. So how do you identify these people who are at risk for suicide?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so significant. When we go out to do these education programs at agencies, at local centers, schools and colleges, we do have a pre and post survey where we can try to identify if they are at risk, and if they are, we refer them immediately for counseling and for treatment. So we are able to help identify that way. There's a teen screen program at some of the local schools that are already enacted. We would also help with writing school policy. And saying, okay, here's what your policy is. Did you ever consider, because most of them are postvention at schools. They don't have prevention.
Does this start in the elementaries and continues right through to college, or?
It does.
No? Okay.
I mean, we don't get into elementary schools to talk about suicide, but there's bullying programs in those schools where they mention it peripherally. But we do go into middle schools, high schools, and colleges to talk about this on a regular basis, and then to do professional training for agencies that are in the field of mental health.
Here's the next myth about suicide. People who talk about it do not try to kill themselves. And the fact is, yes, they do. Very often it is the first attempt at how people will view their death.
That's true. The first one was a myth because they're not crazy. They're usually depressed or mentally ill or have serious mental problems. The second one is they will do it. The first time they talk about it isn't the first time they think about it. We've learned that through research that at least 100, 200 attempts, either in their mind, mentally, or thought processes, or actual physically trying to do it before they actually do it. And I will give you a case in point. My brother killed himself at age 40.
And were you ever aware of any of the symptoms that he exhibited?
He drove around in a car telling us he's going to do that. So you have to take it serious. We didn't at the time. I took him to see the family priest.
Times have changed then. We've gotten much better at identifying those needs and people crying out for help, I would assume then.
And you need to listen. If someone has signs, if they're giving away prized possessions, if they're not taking care of themselves, if they're isolated, if they're going to church all the time. Now that might seem like a good thing to do, and it is, but if they're going all the time, sometimes they're trying to make amends.
All the time, and they'd never gone before?
And never gone before.
Yeah. Okay, here's the other myth. There is nothing you can do to stop them once they decide, and the fact is you can't actually refer for help. I mean, you can go and say, oh, wait, no, okay. So how does Phil do that? I see this person over here, and I'm just seeing all the signs are just adding up to everything. So who do I go? Do I call you at the health department?
No, you want to call the 1-800 hotline that we have for suicide prevention in Erie, and we do have a 24-hour hotline where someone will reach. You want to refer to Safe Harbor Behavioral Health, Dr. Mandy Fowle. She's in charge of the inpatient unit. You want to reach out to this person and do a quick lethality assessment. Let's say it is me. Here's the questions you need to ask me, Phil. You don't want to say, geez, Patty, you're not going to kill yourself, are you?
Right.
No. You say things like, do I have to be concerned about you right now? You know, is there somewhere I can call? Would make them an ally in the process of getting help. I notice you've been extremely sad for quite a while. Don't be afraid that by introducing the topic that they're going to do it. And in Erie, you can 302 people. You can put them mentally. You can put them in a hospital for 72 hours if they are a danger to themselves or others for a mental evaluation against their will.
I would assume this is where medical intervention can help with drugs.
Yes.
Zoloft, whatever the number of antidepressants are. Is that what you're talking about here? That we're going to direct you into a channel where you can get help for your illness. Because you know what, Patty? If your arm was broken and your forearm was sticking out through your blouse here, and you'd go, my God, I'm hurting. And I'd go, well,
and you can see it.
What are you complaining about?
Right.
Yeah, you can see it, right, but you can't see this.
You can't see
this. So
this.
you'd say, well, if your arm is broken, you would go get help. If you're depressed, go get help.
And the stigma is being released.
There you go. That was my next question.
The stigma is being erased. People, celebrities are stepping forward saying, hey, I have this. Patty Duke said, hey, I've been depressed my whole life. We need to hear more people step up and admit that they've had problems so that we can get...
So it's not weakness. You know, cripe, quit complaining. You know, all you do is complain about everything, you know. Man up. Yeah, man up. Here's the next myth. Suicide only strikes certain ages, and the fact is that anybody can kill themselves. So
anybody can kill themselves. While it's true that there's a trend in who kills themselves, and it seems to be prevalent more in males and prevalent more in white people, that's not to say that it's only prevalent in that area. But if you study statistics and research, there is a pattern or a trend.
And this one, just we glanced off of this one. People who attempt to suicide are weak. And the fact is, no, they are in pain and probably have a chemical imbalance in the brain, because many strong people do die by suicide.
So true. I mean, we had one yesterday.
It is reported more in the media as dying unexpectedly or dying suddenly. You will very rarely see local media reporting it other than that, but you will see a person of some note who they will say committed suicide.
Yes.
You know.
Or with teenagers, through Child Death Review, we'll see Facebook posts.
Really?
Yes.
So the social media is playing into this. They could be crying on social media for help. Twitter. Facebook, Instagram, whatever. There's so many.
Or after their death. Some students will bond together and create a campaign at the school. Hey, you know, so-and-so committed suicide. Let's raise money to help do a suicide walk awareness. Or something like that in his memory. The Yellow Ribbon Project was in memory of a young boy, Mike Emmy, who killed himself. And his parents started that project, which is nationwide now.
That's the suicide part. This is another part that I was not aware of, by the way. There was then what's called a death review. And in child death review cases, there is a reporting system that is, and I'm holding it, 22 pages long when you review the death of a child.
We have to fill out
we can
that
talk
for every
5
child.
days about this. Why 22 pages?
They want to gauge every single thing you can find out. Okay. Even now, they're getting into the coroner's reports and looking to see how much did the lungs weigh, how much did the brain weigh, to see if there was anything medically wrong with the child. They want to get into OCY reports and say, was this reported? Was there correct supervision? Was there ever intervention?
So this is sent to a national clearinghouse then, and there's all kinds of data then that we can use.
Yes.
So my notes say, one of them is on death review, determine if the death was preventable.
Yes.
Okay.
The Erie County Child Death Review Team reports to the Pennsylvania State Death Review Team. They report to the National Child Death Review Team. And many people in your audience might not even know that we have a team.
You're right.
And we do.
It's not a thing that comes up in conversation a lot, no.
Yeah. We have,
unless you're a professional like yourself.
We have about 25 to 35 professionals that sit on a team, and around the table we review each death individually with law enforcement, children's services, maybe crime victim center, and then over here we'll have drug and alcohol, mental health, social service agencies, of course the public health department, data. Everyone brings their files to share at the meeting under an act where they are permitted to do so by an act. It's enacted in Pennsylvania that you are permitted to do so, and share and say, oh, you know what? The fire department might say, oh yeah, you know what? We had to call there twice, and maybe this child wouldn't have died of carbon monoxide poisoning if we had given them a carbon monoxide detector.
Okay.
Had we known that.
Sure.
So
a lot of things going on, modifying, changing, a lot of words here. You can educate the community as to what's going on here. You can policy changes, all kinds of
engineering controls.
Enforcement. Yeah, all this data coming together.
If we determine it was preventable, we say, okay, so for instance, we had an inordinate amount of SIDS deaths one year. It was just too many. Because we have
again, SIDS standing for?
Oh, sudden infant death syndrome.
Okay.
And we said, well, gosh, a simple thing would be to start a campaign to provide cribs.
Sure. Yeah.
And it just seemed like, let's duh, why didn't we do that? So we did.
Yeah.
That helped lower that.
Cribs for our children, you could stick your head in there.
Yeah, I know.
And now you can't, what is the measurement? Is it the width of a pop can or soda can?
You have to have certain measurements.
Right.
And you have to have a crib available. Some people don't have cribs available, so they sleep the child with them. Ugh. And that's not good. No. And then we say, back to sleep, tummy to play. It wasn't like that when you and I grew up.
One more time.
Back to sleep, put them on their back, tummy to play.
Good.
So it's not that we say that you would smother, but it is less likely for a child to have SIDS if they're put to sleep on their back.
Right.
And you have to remember that we're trying to prevent SIDS deaths. So just by giving out those cribs every year, we have been able to lower the amount of SIDS deaths. That's just one example of a good campaign.
When you say you give out the cribs, do you at the health department, is that part of your responsibility?
We partner with the hospitals to do that.
All right.
And we provide them through our network and through Children's Miracle Network, who actually ends up paying for them.
Okay, that's a good thing. Again, this is Patty Pauline. She's with the Erie County Department of Health, and we're talking today about suicides and then the child death review policy that accompanies all of this. Now, what happens if in your investigation you find out that this wasn't a suicide, that the child was murdered, that the parents or whomever conspired to get rid of this child?
Well, we rely on the coroner's report, and he will, on the death I get all the death certificates.
Okay. All right.
He'll say, he'll determine whether it was a suicide, a homicide, whether it was undetermined, or what was natural causes. So that will be on the death certificate. We have that advantage that we know going in what it was.
Okay. A lot of agencies take part in this Erie County Suicide Task Force, right?
He's on our committee.
Yes, and You sometimes have in here the life of a troubled mind suffering in silence, and yet at the same time calling out for help, and us not recognizing the signals. But let me just be the devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Because that's all well and good in a very polite conversation like this. But you know, sometimes we just want to say, geez, you know, Patty's nuts. You know,
exactly.
You know, come on, who are you kidding here? You know, I mean,
exactly.
you beg right off of that. Yeah.
Right, and that happens to a lot of people, especially some of the places I started to call and try to get in to talk to are prisons, homeless places, local shelters, places where these people are hopeless, where they feel hopeless.
Hopeless, yeah.
And you might remember that some people actually die in the park because they've been uncovered or because they're exposed to the wind. But you don't know how many people get hit by trains every year. That just, are they walking into a train? We don't know if that's suicide. See, a lot of the time, Lyle Cook told me he doesn't know.
I've heard of suicide by police, where the person will come up with a weapon, knowing full well that they're going to push the limits of being told, put the weapon down, don't aim it,
and the minute they aim it, they're shot.
They're shot.
And the police shoot to kill.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's happened in Erie. That's happened probably across the United States.
Oh, I'm sure it has, absolutely.
And you're right, that is something within the back of their mind, they know, okay, if I push too far, they'll kill me.
You mentioned something, I think
a suicide note sometimes is left.
Yes, yeah. People will do that on Facebook.
Yes.
They'll leave cryptic messages on their computers. You mentioned about prisons. Prisons, as we know, are filled with people who shouldn't be in prison in many cases, a lot of mental illness, and they're in there. And does prison just exacerbate the whole mental illness and say, I am doomed, I have no way to go, but I'm going to just kill myself in prison?
Well, they're managed in prison,
okay.
And there is a suicide watch in the prisons, so that they do have components of safety, and they know how to do that. What they don't get sometimes is programs like ours to come in and talk to them about discussing their feelings. They don't get education programs specific to that topic. So we think by bringing that in, it adds a layer of hope to the inmates.
Let's go back a little bit. You mentioned about coming into the schools and educating the students. When would be an optimum age to say, today we're going to have a very special guest today. It's going to be Ms. Patty Pauline, and she's going to talk to you about something that we feel it's time you should know about. What would be the optimum age to come in? And then continue that the following year.
Maybe 15.
15?
Because we don't see as many deaths under that age, but 15 to 18. And it's not so much that they kill themselves by a gunshot or by pills. Sometimes it's drunk driving and just driving so fast that they don't care what happens to them. So and we do see a lot of motor vehicle deaths and prescription drug abuse deaths. Prescription drug abuse deaths, I don't know if you know this, has overtaken motor vehicle deaths.
No, I didn't
Did you know that?
No. How are they able to get their hands on the prescription drugs? I mean, you have to go to a doctor and say,
you have to go to a doctor.
I want this because, I mean, you're using the doctor as your advocate for your suicide.
Or you could go to a friend's medicine cabinet. Or you could get them from a friend or buy them on the street. I mean, they're readily available right now. But we're trying to take that away by having these med return units everywhere, where people can come in and return your medication to the county courthouse, to Girard Police Department, to Lawrence Park. We have 6 police departments where you can take your expired medication, and out of the 200,000 pills we've collected so far, 200,000. 20,000 were opiates.
Really?
See, our goal is to take death drugs off the street, opiates, things that could kill you. I don't care so much about the blood pressure medication. You know, I mean, I do. But that's not what we're tracking. What we're tracking and auditing the boxes with Dr. Kim Burns from LECOM and her staff, and those pharmacy interns have been invaluable in helping us.
Amazing, amazing. Again, Patty Pauline from the Erie County Department of Health, and we're talking about suicide prevention and then what happens after the death of a child. There was a huge review that takes place. I'm holding the forms in my hand here. It is 22 pages long, and on each page there probably are 15 questions that you have to check off. A very thorough thing. Do we find that the mental illness can be hereditary, and that if Grandpa killed himself, that maybe there's a good chance that that can be passed along? I mean,
you're right. That's actually one of the risks in a brochure, a checklist, prior suicide attempts, family history of suicide.
Okay.
And I don't know so much that it's mental illness that runs in the family, although I think you're right, it might be, but the predilection is there.
Okay.
So that you can say that was a part of your family history.
Okay. So Phil is, you're going to observe me and say, you know, I think really you need some help because I notice your personality has changed. You're no longer that ebullient person that says hi and
right.
You know. So, but let me do the other side of the coin there. Keep your nose out of my business, for the crying out loud. Why don't you just mind your own business? Now, how do you balance the
Any
two?
kind of outbursts like that, though, anger, denial, frustration, or they're not happy anymore. You might, though, see the flip of that and see people finally be at peace and happy because they've made a decision.
Yes.
That they're going to, and they'll pick a date. A date that surrounds, I found this out, surrounds something important to them.
Okay. Okay, I've noticed that in reports too, that there
holidays.
was something significant about that. Yes.
Holidays are very depressing for a lot of people that have
What is the most depressing? Is it? Can you name one? Or the holidays generally? I mean,
Christmas.
Christmas is, everybody's happy and gay and getting presents and dancing and having fun and the family's here, and other people are going, oh no, I can't do it again. The family drives me nuts. I just need to go to my room and I can't be a part of that. What's wrong with me?
And
Why
it's
can't
bad weather.
I enjoy it?
It's all
the
that.
weather's cold and damp here. And by the way, that's another thing I wanted to ask you. The suicide, doesn't matter whether you live in Erie or Miami, Florida. It's still, there's a play into the damp, dark, dank days that we have as compared to sunny and 85.
You know, I don't know that. That's a good question. I'd like to, well, I'm going to go back and find that out.
Okay.
I don't know that.
Okay.
I'll bet that it does.
But I was wondering if, of course, that Christmas time would be probably the biggest time. Yeah. Yeah. Women more than men? You say no, it is...
It's more men.
White males, prevalently.
Mostly.
Mostly, yeah. And children, not so much, not until they get to be beyond 15.
Usually. We did have a young suicide, but that's not common. That's rare. And you'd have to wonder how that child started to be depressed. You're probably at a much younger age.
Right. And
to look for those signs and symptoms. And it would have been very difficult to look for that. But that would be, if you see a child who's extremely sad all the time and poorly, maybe not taking care of themselves, it's certainly a couple red flags there.
Oh, it certainly is. Patty, this has been a wonderful conversation we've had today. It's about suicide, the myths and the facts about suicide, and then the fact that a child's death is always reviewed and the data is gathered as to how we can better serve those people who need this help and reach out to them and say, but we can help you. There's medications that can help you. There's counseling that can help you. You got about a minute, so sum up the suicide.
We do follow a prevention matrix, and all our programs are evidence-based so that they do qualify under the SAMHSA evidence-based spectrum of prevention. So I want you to know that.
Okay, good. Good information.
Thanks so much.
Great to talk to you too.
To talk to you. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks for being with us today. I'm Phil Fatika. Until next time, take care.